Hello and welcome to CIO Leadership Live. I'm your host, Kathy O'Sullivan, editor for CIO New Zealand. My guest today is Thomas Hyde, Executive Director and Chief Digital Officer at Becca. Hello, Thomas.
Kia ora, Kathy. How are you?
Very well, thanks. And it's so great to have you here today. So first of all, can you just tell us a little bit more about your role and about what your team at Becca does?
Sure. So for people who don't know, Becca is a professional services firm. We're about 3,700 people. We've grown up in New Zealand with quite a history in engineering, designing things and helping get stuff designed and built. And a lot of that footprint in New Zealand, and then we've branched out internationally. So technology's always been a big part of our business, and I guess we're just seeing that evolving as it supports our various technical disciplines alongside engineering. I think we have about 70 different professional disciplines in the business, and like everybody, I guess we've been looking at what does the digital disruption around us mean for our type of business in the future. You know, how we've operated for the last 100 years isn't necessarily going to be the way things work in the future. And so my role as Chief Digital Officer was established about 2 years ago to really get more serious about responding more deliberately to that digital disruption. And so that's really my day job. We brought together a team of about 100 people from across the business to create a bigger digital team, and really as a kind of focal point for, I guess, addressing both the threat of all of that, and sort of frame it as how do we avoid a Kodak moment on either parts of our business or for all of our business, but also the other side of that coin, the opportunity side of it in terms of what does it mean in terms of how we can take the things we've learned and the value that we create and package it up in new and different ways. And so we've kind of the team that I have really is there to span all of those activities, but very much working in concert with the other parts of the business. It's an all of business activity, and quite an ambitious transformation program. And I guess in my role as executive director, it's taking that perspective to the more of the governance level of the business and thinking about the interests of our shareholders as an employee-owned business, and I guess taking that more that technology and change perspective into our board conversations.
And as you know, transformation, it's thrown around as a word as if it's a given within an organization, but in reality, it's not an easy thing to do. So how has that approach taken shape in your own career?
Yeah, look, it's been a journey. Probably is a bit of a cliche, but I've been involved on the technology side of our business for at least 20 years, and in various different stages. And as I said, technology's always been a feature, and we've always been adapting and evolving. I think all that's changed really is there's the external factors and the acceleration of change and the convergence of different technologies, and so it just means you've got to be more deliberate about how you respond. I talked about the changes we implemented a couple of years ago. I guess preceding that, there was quite a lot of time and effort put into just sort of education and awareness raising, really sort of creating that case for change, or the sort of platform of understanding that you need to actually mobilize the business. We quite early on came to a view that there are different businesses and sectors taking different approaches. You took a look at the fintech sector, you could see who are probably further down the disruption path than the sort of engineering consulting sector, trialing different approaches. Do you try and transform your bricks and mortar business? Do you create something new off to the side and grow that, and as your other business sort of potentially reduces over time? We took the view that rather than create a kind of a digital island off to the side, that we were better trying to uplift the entire business, and fairly quickly to understand that's actually a really difficult thing to do, but really the right thing to do. And so lots of conversation at the exec team, and really getting that, gauging what's the appetite to address this. Are we willing to invest, because it's going to take significant dollar investment, but also it's prioritizing where people are going to put their time and energy, and there was definitely an appetite to do that. And then it came down to, okay, well then if we understand strategically what we're trying to do, if we understand what sort of functions we need to have that we didn't have, and I'd sort of identified that if we're going to start looking at productizing intellectual property or commercializing things that we're doing, or look at selling digital offerings alongside our traditional services, there are probably some capabilities that we need in the organization that we don't have, and those are kind of what I focused on building in Beca Digital, and then looking at how do we connect those with existing functions across the business. So that kind of functional approach helped before we leapt to, okay, so therefore what's the wiring diagram? Sometimes I think people leap straight to the show me what the org chart looks like before having tackled those first steps. So that really helped. So then the case for change was there, the sort of senior buy-in to putting some priority and resource into it, and then it came down to then actually implementing it.
So you've touched on this a little bit there, but do you think there is a starting point to a transformation journey? Are there kind of key steps CIOs must take along the way to start a transformation?
You've got to start with the business conversation. Really start with the why. Why do we think this is important? As you sort of were intimating, the word transformation has been used a lot. Digital has been used a lot, and it means different things to different people. And so, the time and energy needed to sort of anchor it all back, and every business will have a strategy that it's identified. And so it's then starting with that, really saying, well, is this aligned? Is it a feature of? Do we need to change our strategy to reflect this threat or opportunity? Unless you can get people buying into a reason to change, everything else after that, you're not going to make much progress.
What are some of the common roadblocks, do you think, that you find in a transformation journey? Are there any challenges that you've had to overcome?
Oh, absolutely. Well, I think it's all about culture, really. We have a very strong culture in our business, as most businesses do. It's a behaviour of all of the people all of the time, and that will be different in different businesses. We are a very project-based organisation, so it's all about teamwork. There's nothing, there's very few things we can do for our clients that don't involve a number of people coming together. And then you add to that we're employee-owned as well. So, a large number of our people have a vested interest in the business, and so that means when you want to take the business in a direction, there's a lot of conversation to have to get people on board with that. Because if you don't have the people on board, despite what you might say, it's definitely not a command and control kind of culture, and so it's about persuasion, education, and then if you can get everyone on all pointed in the same direction, then it can really move quite quickly. So the blockers to that are things like often people will react to, this sounds like a lot of jargon, I don't understand it. And so there's a responsibility, I think, for people in technical leadership roles to use language and concepts that are relevant to people, depending on where they're coming from in their change. And that can be around the executive table, it could be in middle management levels, and it can be right at the shop floor as well. The story might have to be different for different people. We found it quite useful, particularly at the exec level, to bring in other organisations who'd had a go at things and tell their story about what had worked well, what hadn't worked well, why they thought it was important to do something around digital transformation. There's also a fear factor. Certainly when you start pushing hard around, hey, we think we need to embrace automation a lot more strongly. Well, the initial reaction from some people can be, well, actually, that means my job's at risk. And so we had to turn that conversation to actually think about what you're doing on a daily basis, particularly for some of our engineers who are doing similar manual kind of calculations or something over and over and over. Well, actually, wouldn't it be great if perhaps a computer could do that for you a lot faster, so you can actually spend more of your time being creative and coming up with lots of new ideas and new ways of working. So there's that kind of conversation. And the other thing is, sometimes you say, well, I think this digital stuff's really important, and those people over there should really do that, as opposed to why it might be relevant to everybody, and how you make it personal and real for everybody, which again comes back to there's a basic level of digital competency or digital awareness that I think you've got to be investing in as well.
And I'm interested to get your view on whether you see transformation as a project with a deadline, or do you think it's an ongoing development in a business? Is there ever an end date to transformation?
I don't think it is, and I think certainly in the world we're living in, the reality is that we're going to see ever increasing acceleration of change on multiple fronts, and so to address that, I think you've got to deal with how do you build the capabilities into the organisation to deal with that, whether it's digital or decarbonisation or various kind of initiatives. So how you build it into the muscle memory, so it's not just hey, here's a peak we're going to get through and everyone's fatigued at the end of it and we will phew, that's all kind of over, because I just don't think we live in that kind of world. And I think COVID's demonstrated that. I think so. So I think there's things like where and how you embrace things like agile or growth mindset, and uplift the whole business around that. I think there are overall transformation agendas, and so for us, digital is there's a long-term transformation agenda, and we're articulating the things that we think are important around that. And then I think it's the specific initiatives you've got to think about. Well, what are the things you're trying to do as part of that agenda that you do time box, and that you do from a change management perspective, try and coordinate so that the business can cope with the amount of change you're doing, and that people understand how it might fit with the overall agenda, but does have a start and a finish.
So then, as Chief Digital Officer, in what ways are you influencing and collaborating with the organisation and its leadership team?
Yeah, so we've got quite an agile approach with our executive team. It's quite a broad team because we've got quite a complicated matrix structure, and so it's quite flat. The CEO with a number of executives reporting in, and that's part of the team I'm in, and so each of us, I guess, brings to that conversation our own sort of portfolio and objectives. I've certainly spent quite a lot of time, through that sort of journey I talked about earlier in terms of getting digital onto the agenda. As we framed that up, that was actually quite a collaborative. I was working with 2 or 3 others it wasn't just my idea to frame that up and then take that conversation through the wider team. And I guess my responsibility there has been as much as a communication and translation kind of thing, how to make this agenda relevant to each part of the business, and actually what's the opportunity for different parts of the business to own different aspects of that. So if I take some of our business groups, they're all operating in different parts of the market. They're dealing with clients who are at different levels of maturity. In some cases, the digital need might be more actually helping our clients transform and embrace technology, and others it might be more about, hey, we need to get more contemporary and current. And so understanding what their story was like in each part of the business was really my role to orchestrate that conversation, and then that fed into, okay, so what are going to be our priorities, and making sure that there's real strategic buy-in and strategic alignment. So in my role, it's a lot around partnership. So understanding what the digital plan is for each part of the business group. What can I do to support that with my team? Where do my colleagues need to be investing and bringing people in? How do we join the dots across it? So that's a very collaborative kind of approach. We've seen some, each of those business groups appointing their own digital leaders, which we can then sort of use as a virtual kind of structure across the business. And then it's partly off the back of the COVID, we've actually then put a new sort of operating model in place with our exec team. So we actually have different forums that come together with a different kind of focus. So for example, there's a subset who come together, look at all the sort of corporate functions and agree what are the investment priorities, what's the plan for the year. We've got a growth and transformation team, which is there to think about, okay, are we investing enough in the next horizon? So, for example, where I've got digital enterprises that we're investing in, I go to that group to say, okay, well, here's the next experiment we'd like to do, and sort of with new venturing kind of functionality there. So there's quite a shift for us in terms of taking some of that agile ways of working that we had to hurriedly put in place, when we were worried about the business disappearing, in the early days of lockdown, and then trying to actually build that in ongoing. And it's been
and great to see that at the leadership level as well, which is not really happening in many organizations, and great to see that Agile is actually at the leadership level as well. So the role of CIO, CTO, CDO, it's an evolving one. What do you think are some of the key attributes of a modern day CIO in relation to leadership?
Yeah, look, I think some of them are still the same as they have been for probably the last 10 years or so, when we've talked about, to have a real seat at the executive table in a technology leadership role, you need to be first and foremost a business leader, and being able to translate the, it's a two-way conversation around, what's the opportunity that digital's bringing to what the business could do, and then the other directions, what does the business need, and from technology in order to meet its objectives. So there's that business acumen and business understanding that I think a CIO needs to have, and it's very much a communication role. So being able to clearly translate those benefits and risks and so on. There is definitely a risk and opportunity lens that CIO needs to be able to have a good understanding of change management, because I think it is a transformation role. At the moment that may not be as extreme for some businesses as others, but I do think it's the ability to build consensus, to communicate, to I guess with that business lens also secure investment for things, and the ability to mobilize the resources across the enterprise.
And when it comes to your own team, then how are you creating an internal culture that allows your team to thrive?
It's similar to what we've done at the exec team. So I quite deliberately, in bringing those 100 people together, quite deliberately put them into much more of an agile construct than we have in some of our more traditional parts of the business, which are geared more towards multidiscipline delivery of large-scale projects. And so it was very much, again, anchored back in strategy. We said, look, we need a modern digital platform. We need to be thinking about how we commercialize and develop product. And so actually having people around my exec team who own those portfolios, and then we meet on we have a weekly scrum where that team comes together, and the idea there is to join the dots. What are the problems that we're facing? In most cases, they need cooperation across the different parts, and I guess in the way I've structured that team, we can see across the entire business. We're connected to the business groups. We've got all the corporate IT activity. We can see all of the things we're trying to do externally, and so our job is to really prioritize where do we put our effort and work. So you're kind of getting this executive team modeling some agile decision making, then we're replicating that, and then that percolates down. And so the idea being that with that 100 people, we can actually cover off a whole lot of different things. People come together in different teams to solve different problems, whether that's looking at security or cyber threat across our external facing technology, or managing a large enterprise system replacement, all those sorts of things.
Agile from the top right down. I love it.
That's right. Yeah.
So when you reflect on your own career, are there any mistakes that stand out that have really shaped you as a leader?
Yeah, certainly. I think there's always finding that balance between, because I think in technology roles, we're probably always thinking a bit about the future, because rate of change is so high. You always think about the what's next. I think where I've come unstuck maybe with some of our technology projects is when we've just run a bit too far in front of the business, and or grabbed a piece of technology that might not be quite as proven as we'd like, and then throw it at the business. An example would be we put a document management system in many years ago, and went with a fairly bleeding edge technology. I was pretty convinced it was going to work, and it ended up being a very challenging change management journey, because the tools we were replacing were actually quite well liked by our community, and we were taking people to a whole nother level of sophistication in terms of information management. And I kind of exposed that we'd kind of forgot to teach people about document management 101 and what's version control and things like that. So yeah, some hard lessons learned around adoption and culture change, and getting people to buy in and all of that sort of thing.
So what's some of the best career advice you've ever received?
I got well, fairly early on when I joined Beca. It was one of the founders of our business, a guy called Ron Carter, Sir Ron Carter, and he'd had a bit of a hand in me joining the business, and a huge amount of time for Ron, and he took me aside fairly early on, and he said, look, in a consultancy business like this, you do need to manage your own career, and he said, one of the things you should look to do is try and reinvent yourself every 5 years, which was really good advice. And I think I have probably had 4 different careers, professional careers, effectively, in the same business. And part of what's fueled that, I guess, is always looking for the adjacencies. Everything you do, there's always new doors that open up, and so I guess using those certainly early on in the career to explore what does he actually really enjoy doing. In the world that I live in, you could stay in the technical world, you could move more into people management, you could move into business development, you could move into looking after client relationships. And so quite deliberately exposing and yourself to those kinds of things. So trying lots of stuff early on, and being prepared to keep moving. And I think the advice I'd have that sits underneath that is, a willingness to keep learning. I think if the people who succeed in long-term technology careers, I think, are those who just continually learn and continually adapt, and a lot of being open to that learning coming from the people who are working around you, that could be more junior people or whatever. So growth mindset and willingness to learn.
Yeah, that growth mindset is so important, isn't it?
Yeah.
So finally then, Thomas, can you tell us what's important to you in the months ahead?
Yeah, look, we've got some pretty big programs underway. We're I think finally getting to a point where we all have completely modernized our technology stack. We've just made a decision on a replacement of pretty much our core back office system, our sort of practice management, financial management platform. So it's kind of open heart surgery, really, on a professional services firm. There's a reason why we've waited 20 years to do it, and so look, that's probably the main focus for us now is having made that decision, is everything we've just talked about around turning our minds to, okay, well, how do we really successfully get this embraced by the business and manage the project through while there's lots of other stuff going on. So that's probably what will be keeping me and my team busy for the next 2 or 3 months.
Well, we wish you all the best with the open heart surgery on the business. Thomas Hyde, Chief Digital Officer at Beca, thank you so much for your time today.
That's great. Thanks, Kathy. Great to be here. Appreciate it.